only 12th fastest in the warm-up, which is a good pointer for form, because in the warm-up half hour earlier on today, the cars went out on full tanks and race rubber, not the very soft qualifying tyres, and it's significant that Reutemann was fastest, Piquet was second fastest, Alan Jones was third fastest, and the fastest turbo, that of Alain Prost, was fourth. Now there is the World Championship position that I was just talking about, with Carlos Reutemann. 9 points for a win, don't forget, so Reutemann has just got a 6-point lead over Nelson Piquet, and you get 6 points for second place. Then Jacques Lafitte in third place. A big crowd, not as big as we've seen in the past, which is rather surprising because the conditions could hardly be better. It's pretty good for the non-turbocharged cars because Zandvoort is literally at sea level, so the turbos do not get the advantage that they get at altitude circuits like Kyalami in South Africa and Zeltweg in Austria. And also the conditions are not too hot today, so that also benefits the normally aspirated engines. Well, with me now, as ever, the man who won the 1975 and 1976 Grand Prix, and as you look at the map and they go round on the warm-up lap, James Hunt.
Well, there go the cars around the Tarzan corner. That's a second gear hairpin at the end of the main straight. They come into that about 180 miles an hour, break down to slow hairpin, little right-hand flick there. They go through that in third gear, and then down into the one called the Hunsrug, which is the slowest corner on the circuit, the left-hander. They're just coming out of the Hunsrug, and that's the sort of tight little complex around the back of the pits after the start-finish line. Now it opens out. These bends are all completely flat out. Here, where you see Prost going away up the hill, over the brow, and then he gets on the brakes. The car goes light over the brow, and you see him coming into view now down through a long sweeping right-hander, definitely the best corner on the circuit. Difficult one, taking it about fourth gear, very quick. Down a short straight now, they then go round left-hander, which is flat out, but they've got to get onto the brakes a bit for the new slow corner put in there. Then back through the fast sweeping corners through the dunes, again all flat out, and very quick indeed. They're up to about 165, 170 miles an hour, and they brake very hard as they come down to the new chicane that was put in, well, say new, nearly 10 years ago, I think, to slow the cars down. Again, goes through a right and then a left. Again, they take that in second gear, possibly, and then away they accelerate. Well, they're not accelerating now, of course, because they're on their warming-up lap, and they're coming towards the end of the lap, so the poleman Prost is bringing the field slowly in, so they bunch up, and he doesn't have to wait the front markers don't have to wait too long for the back markers when they get on the grid. That's the final corner. You see the cars in now. Fast sweeping right-hander, not quite flat out, depending on how well your car is set up. Very difficult and very important, because that corner dominates your speed all the way down the straight, and if you do it wrong, you slow down the straight and other cars can pass you, and obviously it hurts your lap time a lot. So that's a very, very important corner, that last one onto the straight. Field weaving about a little bit, just warming up their tyres, get a bit of energy into the tyres to bring the rubber up to working temperature. These big, bald racing tyres get very soft and sticky when they're hot, but they're most difficult to drive on when they're cold, and of course have very much less grip. Coming up towards the start-finish line, so I'll hand you back to Murray Walker.
And the British starter, Derek Ongaro, ready to activate the lights from red to green. And it's very, very interesting to watch the turbocharged cars. I've said in the past, and I'll say again, that they are slower off the line. So watch carefully. The car behind René Arnoux, who's on the left of your picture, number 1 is the reigning world champion, Alan Jones, 4th fastest in practice. On his left and your right, tucked up underneath the rear wing of pole position man Alain Prost's turbocharged Renault, is Nelson Piquet. That's number 5, the Brazilian, of course, who finished in first place here last year and is second in the World Championship. There is the sign that the course is clear, the lights are red and green, and it's go for the Dutch Grand Prix. Away well into the lead, Arnoux in second place, and that is Villeneuve, who has spun off at Tarzan corner, and before he has even reached the first corner on the first lap, Gilles Villeneuve looks as though he's been punted off the course. The Renaults are in first and second position, with Prost leading, Arnoux in second place, and then Jones and Piquet.
Well, I didn't see exactly what happened there with Villeneuve, but the start that Villeneuve made a very good start from well down the field. He's in about 10th to 12th place on the grid, and I think the starter threw the green very, very quickly for them. He's supposed to wait 6 seconds. That definitely wasn't 6 seconds after the red light goes on, and I think Villeneuve was ready. He made a good start, and of course he was therefore moving before the others, moving faster, and obviously was fighting to find his way through. But hopefully we'll see a replay in a minute.
Well, I don't know if the Renaults are operating to a race plan, but already Prost is pulling out the lead. Arnoux is definitely out. There is the replay.
Yes, well, unfortunately, they cut that replay in a little bit too late for us to see what actually happened. They didn't slow it down, so hopefully we'll see another one a bit later, but back to the race right now.
And we'll see whether Gilles Villeneuve comes through at the end of the first lap. And here is the end of the first lap with 71 to go. And it is Prost in the lead from Arnoux. And then it's Alan Jones in third position with Piquet fourth and Jacques Lafitte as they go into the right-hander at Tarzan, which is where Andrea de Cesaris spun off in practice. And by the way, de Cesaris, in the second of the two Marlboro MP4s, is a non-starter, and his place has been taken by Michele Alboreto, who was 25th fastest in practice. Arnoux second then, Jones third, Piquet fourth, Lafitte fifth, Reutemann sixth, and there it was either Andretti or Giacomelli in the Alfa Romeo with a very bent and twisted front wing, which of course will badly upset the aerodynamics of the car, make the handling very difficult. But Prost looks as though he is already stamping his personality on the race, as in lap 2 he goes through the Marlboro Bocht, that's the new fast chicane, and then on his way down towards Panorama, which is where a lot of well-meaning graffiti had to be cleaned off the course before practice could begin on the first day, because it would have interfered with adherence. And it's still Prost Renault on lap 2, with Arnoux Renault in second position on lap 2. And we are now obviously looking down at a replay of the start, and you can see how the two Renaults accelerated away. And watch for Villeneuve.
Yes, I was looking at that, Murray. I think it was the most unfortunate accident. Villeneuve was going quicker than those two cars, and he went to go between them, which seemed to be a reasonable thing to do, because there was a gap there when he started the manoeuvre, and the two of them just both moved together at the same time, and it did look to me like that was very much an accident. I couldn't see who the other two cars were, but I don't think that it was reasonable to expect that they could both see him at the right time beside them. So I think that's just an unfortunate accident in the way that they can happen at the start.
Well, you saw that, one of the Talbots in the pits. I don't know which one it was. I'm frantically looking down pit lane now to see if I can identify, but I can't see the car number, so I don't know. And meantime, Pironi is in the pits. So it's a disastrous race for Ferrari already, with Villeneuve off on the first lap, Pironi in on the third lap, and Prost is still leading with Arnoux, and a bunch tight up behind René Arnoux in second place, led by Alan Jones, the world champion in the Williams. Look at it. And it's Piquet still in fourth position. Jacques Lafitte, so it must have been Torbe into the pit.
Yes, well, it's as usual, apart from the Renaults in front, we've got all the relevant people in the World Championship pulling up, and Jones has pulled out behind Arnoux, and amazingly enough, he's matching him down the straight, and Jones is through, and Piquet's having a go as well. But Piquet can't quite do it. Well, that is a turn-up that Jones in the Williams managed to actually pass. I said earlier, that corner onto the straight was very critical. Jones was obviously quicker through it than Arnoux, but to do that was really most impressive for straight-line speed. So Jones is now in a very enviable position as far as Piquet and the Lafitte are concerned, because he's managed to deal with one of the turbos. He's pulling away a huge lead already. Arnoux's undoubtedly holding up the other cars behind him, who haven't got the same straight line speed. There goes Prost. Jones will now, I'm quite sure, catch Prost pretty quickly, but it'll be interesting to see if he can do the same thing again and actually get past Prost in the same way that he passed Arnoux. That was, I was quite surprised to see him be able to come alongside and then hold it down the straight and actually, in fact, edge ahead.
Well, now, listeners to Channel 9 in Australia will justifiably be all agog because the world champion's got ahead of Arnoux and Piquet. With the Piquet was behind him, he's got ahead of Arnoux. And now, can he close the gap between himself and Alain Prost, the Frenchman, who is leading as they go out of Panorama? And they are now on lap 4, out of 72, across the line. And the gap between Prost and Alan Jones, with now Piquet coming up to take Arnoux. Now this is very significant indeed, and Jacques Lafitte having a go on the inside of Tarzan. So Arnoux then is down to 4th position behind his teammate, the leader, Prost, behind Alan Jones in 2nd place. Piquet, the new 3rd place man that we're looking at now, who was, of course, very, very quick in practice. Nelson Piquet, indeed, 3rd fastest in practice behind the 2 turbocharged Renaults. By the way, Nigel Mansell has disappeared out of the race this early. John Watson is in 8th position behind Mario Andretti, who is 7th, Carlos Reutemann, who is 6th, Jacques Lafitte, who is 5th, Nelson Piquet, who is in 4th position, René Arnoux, who is 3rd, and we are looking at the 2nd place man, Alan Jones, with the leader, Alain Prost. And the gap between Prost, the leader, and Alan Jones at the end of the previous lap, at the end of lap 4, was 2.94 seconds. And we wait as Piquet is easing away just a foot at a time from René Arnoux, the new 4th place man, for Prost and Jones. And here they come. 2.94 seconds was the gap. And the gap now, as Alan Jones passes me, is 2.77 seconds.
Hold on to it. There is Prost circulating now. Reasonably comfortably. Jones isn't catching him that quickly, but Prost will certainly have to work very hard to just maintain that small lead that he's got, let alone build it.
Alan Jones won the Dutch Grand Prix in 1979, and he really, there's Derek Daly. He's obviously out of the race, of course. I said he had come in. We didn't see him come in, but the march, the John McDonnell run march, came into the pits, and Prost has just gone past completing the lap, and the gap is 2.93. It was on the previous lap 3.04 seconds, and before that it was 2.94 seconds. So the gap is being maintained, I should think, almost to the nearest inch between Prost, the leader, Jones in 2nd place. And Jones is at the corner now where he made his disastrous mistake just there last year when he put the car about a foot too much to the right, rode up on the ridged concrete curbing which lines parts of the circuit, dropped his right-hand skirt between the front and rear wheels into the dirt and the grass, ripped it off, and then had to come into the pits to have that skirt replaced, and finally finished well down, in fact out of the points. And Alan Jones in the World Championship at the moment is in 4th place, the man from Glenburn in Victoria, Australia. And he really does need the points. He won at Long Beach, and then he was in 2nd place in Brazil. Now, that's the position after 5 laps, and you can see 2.8 seconds is the gap. I don't know why they've got Alan Jones in the lead in that situation, because Prost goes past me now, and the gap is 2.74 seconds. The problem with Nigel Mansell, who is definitely out of the race, is that he blew his engine, and Derek Daly went out with a broken rear suspension. So, tough luck for Nigel Mansell, because he's now in a situation where he is actually into his 2nd Grand Prix on the Grand Prix rounds. Last week in Austria, he had his 2nd Grand Prix. It's the same in Holland. And it's Andretti with the very twisted front wing that you can see there, behind Riccardo Patrese. Patrese is in 9th position, and he has got past Mario Andretti, so Andretti is obviously being held up. And the positions at the moment on lap 9 in this 72 lap, there is the leader, Alain Prost, There in second place is Alan Jones. Then in third position is Nelson Piquet. In fourth position it is Jacques Lafitte. In fifth position it is René Arnoux. Sixth is Carlos Reutemann in the point. Seventh is number 7, John Watson. Eighth is Elio De Angelis. Ninth is Riccardo Patrese. And 10th is Mario Andretti. And a lot of excitement. Nigel Mansell is down in the pits. I'm looking down at him as Jones and Prost go through, chased by Piquet and Lafitte and Reutemann. There is Reutemann then is past René Arnoux, who must be in some sort of trouble because now John Watson is challenging him. And John Watson was in 7th position, still is then. So right down the lap chart is going the Renault of René Arnoux.
Yes, I would think he's had some sort of mechanical problem. Impossible really to tell from here, but he seems to have been going steadily backwards through the field since the start of the race almost, and his teammate Alan Prost seems to be going very healthily. So, but of course I think they could have a different choice of tyres. I think from what I understand now, with the competition with different tyre companies involved, the Renaults on their Michelin tyres were a little bit marginal with their extra power for running a soft compound, and it may be that they put Arnoux on the harder compound of tyre to make sure that he lasted, which might be making him a little bit slower. But as I say, without actually being down in the pits and checking it out, it's really impossible to tell, and there's a good chance that they wouldn't even know there if there is a mechanical problem that's slowing him down.
You are looking at the battle between the yellow turbocharged Renault of René Arnoux in 6th position and John Watson in 7th place. And the gap is coming down between Alan Jones and the leader Alain Prost as we look at Jacques Lafitte, who is in 4th position, Carlos Reutemann, who is in 5th, and ahead of both of them, of course, Nelson Piquet 3rd, Alan Jones 2nd, and Alain Prost, the leader, with only 2.1 seconds separating the young Frenchman, 26-year-old Prost from Saint-Chamond in France, and 34-year-old Alan Jones from Glenburn in Victoria in Australia.
Just couldn't believe it. The fuel pressure was there, the ignition was on, and the engine just stopped completely.
How about the start, Nigel? Did you get a good start and get away well?
Well, I got a reasonable start, but I had to sort of anchor up a bit because there's flying cars on the left-hand side. So I made a good start, but then lost about 1 place.
And, all right, so how are you feeling about Monza in 2 weeks' time?
Well, I'm looking forward to Monza very much now. Obviously, I feel very, very bad about today. I just can't believe my luck at the moment because the car was a very, very good balance, and I was just sitting there nicely.
Well, hang on, Nigel. Your luck must turn, and everybody in Britain is behind you. And everybody in Australia will be behind number 1. There he is, the world champion, Alan Jones. And that gap, which has come down from 3 seconds, then to 2.9 seconds, and then to 1.7 seconds, is down to what you can see visually with Alan Jones now having Alain Prost well and truly in his sights. They complete a lap. 1.7 seconds was the gap at the end of the previous lap, and the gap now is 1.5 seconds, and Nelson Piquet in 3rd position in the Brabham, the man who won here last year, don't forget, is not so very far behind Alan Jones. Both the Williams and the Brabham beautifully set up for this Zandvoort circuit.
Yes, they seem pretty evenly matched, quite honestly, at the moment, Mario, the cars in the race. Jones has only been whittling away the Renault's lead very slowly, really. And Piquet, his position hasn't really changed very much relative to Alain Prost since he got past Prost's teammate Arnoux. So I think if we can just get the cars to do us a favour and bunch up a bit, then we've got a really close race on our hands, because I don't think anybody's going to walk away. And I think Alan Jones and Alain Prost are sufficiently closely matched that it's going to be quite a struggle for Jones to get by the Renault.
Lap 14 out of 72, and as we watch Prost, who is is a very cool young customer, and he needs to be with the thundering Alan Jones in his mirrors. The positions are Prost leading number 1, Alan Jones, who is in second place. Nelson Piquet comes out of Boss Sweet to complete his 14th lap in third position, and there is only 1.6 seconds between Jones and Piquet. Fourth is Jacques Lafitte in the Talbot. Fifth is Jones's teammate Carlos Reutemann. Sixth is John Watson in the points. Seventh is René Arnoux, who is slipping back in the Renault all the time. Eighth is Riccardo Patrese. Ninth is Elio De Angelis in the John Player Special Lotus. 10th is Hector Ribac, 11th is Bruno Giacomelli, and 12th is Jean-Pierre Jarier. And bringing up the rear, as it were, the last man still in the running. There's 18 cars still on the course, with Andretti, Daly, Mansell, Pironi, and Torbay out of the running, and Gilles Villeneuve, of course. And there is the gap between Alan Jones and number 1 and the leader, Alain Prost, as they go into the right-hander at Boss Sweet, and they're coming down the straight soon to complete their 15th lap. Well, it's not going to need a stopwatch soon to separate them. Now, this is Boss Sweet, identified a bit early. They're into the top straight, and I see a tail-ender. It's Pironi in front of them. They're catching Didier Pironi, who is back in the race, but a long way down, of course, into Tarzan. This is where brakes are really needed, because they come from 175 miles an hour down to about 110 in second gear for Tarzan before they accelerate away to the Hugenholtz corner that they are at now. Prost, Jones, Alain Prost, the winner of the French Grand Prix, second in Germany, but no less than 8 did not finish situations in races, as a result of which he is only 7th in the World Championship with 19 points. Piquet third, Lafitte fourth, Reutemann fifth, Watson sixth. So the British Grand Prix winner John Watson is coming up through the field, the Marlboro MP4, handling very well indeed in practice. And now I think it's going to be a case of Harry, Alain Prost, every inch of the way by Alan Jones. Difficult to get past, because the Renaults handle much better than the turbocharged Ferraris. The Renault's turbocharged, of course. And there is a turbocharged Ferrari, that of Pironi, as Prost and Jones and Piquet just behind them in third position complete the 16th lap out of 72 into Tarzan. Past Pironi. Pironi's moved over and let them both through. Now to Hugenholtz. This is where Jones went off last year on the second lap at the point I established. Now, just there. Now up to the Rob Slottermacher bend. Very quick indeed. 175 miles an hour. And that's Riccardo Patrese, seemingly out of the race again. He's had the most appalling luck this season. Patrese, who led at Long Beach and is in 9th position in the World Championship. There is the gap as you look down on this very flat, very low-lying circuit, sea level at Zandvoort, between Prost in the Renault, knowing exactly what the situation is. Alan Jones in second place.
Yes, there seems to be a bit of a difference between Alan Prost's car and his general performance and his teammate René Arnoux, because whereas now, at this point on the circuit, this corner onto the main straight, Jones could get right up behind Arnoux. He's behind Prost here. He's not so close. He's not really in a position to attack. He won't pick up enough of a tow, enough of a slipstream. There is Patrese coming into the pit. A bit of a shame that, because he was going very well in the race, because he wasn't, as it were, on our leaderboard, but he was moving through the field quite nicely, and he's got a pretty good car, and he's been driving very well this year, but he's been, as Murray said, in a pretty horrible season luck-wise, with not many finishes.
Well, is this going to be it? Is Jones going to take Prost on braking as they come down to Tarzan? Last year he drove right round the outside of a slower competitor, and he's going to try and do it again. Alan Jones is going to try and drive right round the outside of Alain Prost, but Prost moves across the front of him and just holds Alan Jones back. But all the time, Jones is getting closer and closer, and he must wear Prost down. And that's Lafitte. Jacques Lafitte spun off the course, the man who is in fourth position, the winner of the Austrian Grand Prix. Well, now the Dutch Grand Prix is literally hotting up, and Lafitte has given it best. He's out of the race, and that means to say that up into fourth position will come Carlos Reutemann.
Okay, all that happened just a few seconds ago, so we go back now to the live action, and it's Prost still in front of Alan Jones.
And let's see if Prost is going to force him to go down the outside again.
Lap 20, and Jones is trying, as you can see for yourself. Down to Tarzan, and that's, is that John Watson? No, it's an Alfa Romeo. It's Bruno Giacomelli out of the race. Bruno Giacomelli out, spun off somewhere. But the good news, the bad news rather, is that with Lafitte and Reutemann, the bad news for Talbot and Williams aficionados out of the race, and Alan Jones still challenging Prost for first place. The good news for British viewers is that John Watson is up into fourth place behind Nelson Piquet. The bad news for Carlos Reutemann is that as we look down on Bruno Giacomelli's stricken Alfa Romeo, the bad news for Carlos Reutemann is that his 6-point lead in the World Championship is going to be badly affected, because he is obviously going to get no points in this race, whereas Nelson Piquet, the man who is only 6 points behind him in the World Championship, in second place, is in third place in the race, and we're looking at Salazar and Michele Alboreto and Slim Morgood. And this could be very significant indeed, because Prost and Jones now are closing up on and are about to lap these three cars which are spread across the circuit, Salazar and Alboreto and Morgood.
Yes, absolutely, Murray. And there's a good chance that they won't see it, because they appear to be extremely engrossed in their own battle. None of them are particularly experienced drivers. If they don't see or realise that they got the battle for the lead closing in on them and breathing down their necks, then of course the disadvantage goes to Prost in that situation. He is the leading car. Any messing about they get from the people in front can basically only hurt him, because he's got the lead to lose, whereas Jones might get held up, but he can always catch it up again. So Prost will now be feeling pretty nervous and very anxious to get past them and get himself between the back markers and Alan Jones.
Well, let's see what happens. There is Prost past Salazar, but Jones not. Now, this is where Prost can break away. If he can get past Morgood, the Swedish driver in the ATS, and he has punched his way through, and Jones has gone past Salazar. Jones goes past Morgood, and they're both closing up now on Michele Alboreto, the young Italian Formula 2 and Formula 1 driver, who only got his place in this race thanks to the fact that Andrea De Cesaris was not able to start because there was not a spare Marlboro MP4 for him to race in. And they're coming down to Tarzan now on the 22nd lap out of this 72-lap race. And Prost knows, of course, that Alan Jones is there. What's Michele Alboreto's situation going to do to affect Prost and Jones, with Piquet still in third position on his way to 4 points? And if Piquet finishes there, the lead in the World Championship of Carlos Reutemann will be down to only 2 points, with John Watson in fourth position, but some 5 seconds behind Nelson Piquet. And now, Prost the leader, Jones in second place, are up with Alboreto. Coming up to the Marlboro box, the left and right, new chicane. And Jones challenges. Alboreto about to be lapped. Prost the leader, Jones in second place, and this is lap 23.
Well, Renault not being very helpful at all, but I think once they get onto the main straight, Jones is very close indeed. He can't do it there. No, he has! How amazing! That was very cheeky indeed. He nipped inside the Renault. Fabulous opportunity for Jones, but I fear the Renault might just be able to slipstream its way up. It's a good time for Jones because he's got the toe from that Tyrrell in front of them. A brilliant piece of opportunism by Alan Jones. And Prost is challenging again. I think Prost got the inside. He's done it. Terrific stuff.
Alain Prost is a very gutsy young man, and he demonstrated his qualities there to perfection by fighting back immediately to probably the toughest and one of the most experienced men in World Championship motor racing, Alan Jones. So, momentarily, a new race leader, Alain Prost, led from lap 1 to lap 23, and he's back in the lead again now. He's on his 24th lap, but Alan Jones is not going to take that line down. He needs the points, as I have said before, and he must, because Alan has probably got the best brain in the racing business. He's brought up in a racing atmosphere. His father, Stan Jones, won the Australian Grand Prix and could have been a brilliant Formula One driver. Alan Jones, with 11 Grand Prix victories behind him to Alain Prost's 1 win, is now continuing to push the Frenchman. Prost the leader, Reutemann second. Cheever moves over, Prost goes through. Cheever will see Jones in his mirrors and should move over, but it's given Prost the opportunity to get through the Marlborough box bends a bit quicker, and you can see that he has pulled out the lead, and you can see that Jones is being held up, but goes through. Prost, Jones, Cheever lapped, out now of the Boss Wheaton corner, and in front of the leaders, it is Jean-Pierre Jarier and Marc Surer. Jarier in the Osella. There's confirmation of the official positions, and you see that Jones is under a second behind Prost, about 7 seconds, a bit less than 7 seconds ahead of Piquet, who is something like 14 or 15 seconds ahead of John Watson. Then there is Hector Ribac and De Angelis. In 7th place is Jarier, who is about to be lapped, as is Surer. So the leaders are right with the 7th and 8th place men. They've lapped everybody up to 8th place when they get past Eddie Cheever. There's Prost. They're past Cheever. Now they are up to Marc Surer, who has got Jarier in front of him. Jarier 7th, Marc Surer 8th. Surer, the Swiss driver of the Theodore. And Prost shows him his front wing, but Surer wishes to take no notice of it and proceeds to do exactly that, because Surer is concentrating on Jarier. Prost is concentrating on Surer, but he's also concentrating on Alan Jones, and Jones is concentrating on Prost. So there's a lot of mental activity going on just there at the moment as Prost comes out and passes Surer, as does Jones right behind him. Now they're going to try and get past Jean-Pierre Jarier, and Alain Prost does it, but Alan Jones does not as they go into Tarzan. They are on lap 28 out of 72. Now, Jarier keeping in tight. Jarier made a terrific comeback in Grand Prix racing this year, an enormously experienced driver who had been out of racing, having driven for Shadow and ATS and March and Lotus and Tyrrell and Talbot, but got another chance in the Osella, which Gabbiani and Angel Guerra, the Argentine driver, had not succeeded in qualifying, and Jarier has done it race after race and is right back amongst the forefront of Grand Prix drivers. Jones, number 1, world champion, lap 28 out of 72, a 190.2 mile race distance. Jones. So, on lap 28, out of 72, in the lead, Alain Prost is holding that lead as he comes through to complete another lap ahead of the second-place man, Alan Jones, with Nelson Piquet behind them in third position, John Watson fourth, Hector Ribach fifth, and Elio De Angelis sixth, but a long, long part of the Dutch Grand Prix still to be run. Nelson Piquet we're looking at now. He's closing up on Eddie Cheever in third position. Piquet second in the World Championship, the winner at the Argentine Grand Prix and the San Marino Grand Prix in Italy. Then a bad run of luck at Belgium, at Monaco and Spain, where he failed to finish. Third in France. He went off in the British Grand Prix. So he's got his points for his second place in the World Championship is 39 points from comparatively few races, and he did it with driving like that when he passed Eddie Cheever in the Tyrrell. But Nelson Piquet is now nearly 8 seconds behind Jones and Prost. The Frenchman and the Australian are very, very much making the running. I'm told, incidentally, that the viewers in Australia of Channel 9 are now having barbecue parties to watch the Grand Prix, in which case they've got plenty to celebrate now with Alan Jones, their man, in a very strong second position and challenging Prost, as nevertheless we look at Jarier and Sura battling for 8th position and being closed up on by number 5, Nelson Piquet, the 29-year-old driver from Brasilia, though he lives in Monte Carlo at the present moment. Third position for Nelson Piquet at the moment. 4 points in the World Championship bag if he finishes in third place. And as I said before, that would close the gap between himself and Carlos Reutemann to only 2 points. The World Championship is getting more and more exciting as the series runs on. There's only 3 races left after Holland. The Italian Grand Prix at Monza in a fortnight's time, then the Canadian Grand Prix, and the last race of the series, a new fixture at Las Vegas in California. Mark Sura driving extremely well. He started the season in the Ensign, finished 4th in Brazil in the wet race, a terrific charge. And Sura now has just got Nelson Piquet, there's the Brazilian behind him, looks in his mirrors. I guess he will obviously see that it is Nelson Piquet and might move over. That was a flash of Jarier, number 32, that we saw. And it looks to me as Jarier is going much slower than he was before. He is, of course, a long, long way behind Sura now, as Piquet goes through and laps Mark Sura. And that means to say that Sura must be up into 7th position, with Jarier clearly out of the running. And now Nelson Piquet, having lost some time, will be setting about closing the gap between himself and the race for leadership between Alan Jones in second place and Alain Prost, the leader, with John Watson still in 4th place. And this is lap 31 that we're on, so we're not yet up to half distance. Lap 36, the half distance lap. John Watson in 4th place. Hector Ribach, the second of the 2 Brabham cars with their Ford DSV engines in them, in the top 6, and making up the World Championship points scorers at the present moment. In 6th position, Elio De Angelis, Sura 7th, Eddie Cheever 8th, Michele Alboreto, who only got into the race, as I said earlier on, when De Cesaris had to be dropped, is in 9th position. Salazar, the young Chilean driver who's making such a name for himself in a car which regrettably is not as good as the Williams and Renaults and so on, in 10th position. So he's going very, very much slower than we expected it to, because Andretti, with the appearance, and he's now been lapped by Alan Jones, Andretti, with the appearance of Gerard Ducarouge, the ex-Tour Talbot team manager, who was fired by Guy Ligier in the Alfa Romeo team as team manager now. Luca Rouge, in only a fortnight, has worked wonders with the Alfa Romeo, and Mario Andretti was actually 7th fastest on the grid in practice, which is considerably better than he's been able to do since Long Beach, when he finished in 4th place. So Alan Jones there, some 2.2 seconds now behind Alain Prost, and we're getting pretty close to the half-distance point. Daly out of the race, Lafitte out, Reutemann out, and several of the first 6 in the World Championship are out of the race. Reutemann is out, Lafitte is out, Villeneuve is out, and Giacomelli is out, of course, as is René Arnoux, Jean-Pierre Jarier, Riccardo Patrese, Patrick Tambay, but Mario Andretti still on his way. Well, one shouldn't make forecasts because, as I say, only half the race, less than half the race has been run. But a little crystal ball gazing and hypothesis might be interesting at this stage of the race, because if the race order was the same at the end of 72 laps as it is now, and I'm willing to bet quite a lot of money that it won't be, Carlos Reutemann would be leading Piquet by 2 points. Piquet would be 10 points ahead of Jacques Lafitte in 3rd position. Alan Jones would be only 1 point behind Lafitte, and then it would be Prost and Watson. But having said all that, something will now happen to prove me totally wrong, because with the race now on its 35th lap, and the 36th lap being half distance, there is rather more of the race to run than has already been held. Prost leading, Jones, number 1, second. Jones pressing very hard indeed. Prost, by the way, on Michelin tyres, and Alan Jones is on Goodyear's, and Goodyear have produced a new tyre, a new 15-inch front tyre for this race, which seems to have done the Williams cars a lot of good. Across the line goes Prost, and across the line now goes Alan Jones, and the gap is 3.86 seconds. So Prost is increasing his lead, and I do not believe it is because Alan Jones is having a breather. He's dropping back too consistently for that to be the case. But also we must remember that Prost was leading the Austrian Grand Prix when he had trouble of a kind that we didn't expect. A broken suspension, but more of that later.
Yes, Roy, what you're saying was quite right about Jones dropping back. It's significant also that Nelson Piquet is dropping back proportionately fast to Alan Jones from Prost. But talking of tyres, Piquet is on the same tyres, Goodyear's, as Jones, and it could be the change in form seems to me to have been too sudden for it to be just simply the lightening of the fuel load, as I suggested might be the case earlier with the Renault, because it's been quite dramatic. Jones from being definitely faster than Prost, catching him up and climbing about all over him, actually getting by him into the lead, across the line in front of him on one lap, and then immediately losing it again in a very exciting lap when it all happened at once. Since then, the two Goodyear shod cars seem to have gone backwards relatively, and it therefore makes me think that is the difference. And it may just be that the Goodyear runners have run a fairly soft compound a bit marginally, and therefore they're struggling a little bit with wear as the tyre wear gets on. Or, of course, alternatively, it could be that the Michelin tyres on the Renault are now coming good in the race. Michelin make tyres that tend to be very durable in the race. They don't have problems very often with tyres going off, and it may be that they're just settling in really well.
I am sorry to say to Williams fans that Alan Jones must be in some sort of trouble. Not just because he is dropping back and increasing the gap between himself and Alain Prost, the leader, but because he himself is signalling to his pits as he goes by. I had a good look while James was talking on that lap, and Alan Jones was making some sort of mysterious signal to his pits people, I couldn't decipher it myself. There he is. Maybe we will get a look at him as he comes through and completes the lap. Meantime, we're having a jolly good peer. And it looks to me as though he's actually a bit closer to Prost than he was. It was 4.7 seconds on the previous lap. While he goes past, it's 5 seconds, just 5.04 seconds. So Prost is increasing his lead at the rate of half a second to a second a lap at the present moment, notwithstanding the fact that Jones is continuing to press very, very hard indeed. Never give up. And Jones can see, metaphorically, 6 points in front of him. And those 6 points are going to really close up the World Championship gap. Jones in second place. Piquet is still third. Watson is now about 15 seconds behind Piquet. And Watson in fourth position. In fifth position, Hector Rybak. In sixth place, Elio De Angelis. Then in seventh place, Mark Sura. Eighth, Eddie Cheever. Ninth, Salazar, who went out of the Austrian Grand Prix in 10th place. So Salazar is higher up in a Grand Prix than he has ever been before in his first season of World Championship Grand Prix racing. A fine achievement, and let us hope that he finishes this time and brings some luck to Mo Nunn's little ensign team. Out of the Foss Sweet corner again come Alain Prost, and here in second place Alan Jones, chasing the Frenchman down to Tarzan, with Nelson Piquet coming out of Foss Sweet, chasing Mario Andretti, who has long since been lapped by Alan Jones. In fact, Mario Andretti is 4 laps now behind the leaders, and everybody up to 6th position, that is to say Elio De Angelis, has been lapped by both Alain Prost, the race leader, Alan Jones in second place, as Jones goes round Sky Black, that very fast right-hander, notches the gearbox up into fourth position, now back into second for the left-hand part of the Marlborough bends, and now away to complete another lap, and that will be the end of lap 39. That part of the circuit to himself. Nelson Piquet challenging for points all the time. It goes into the left-hander at Hugenholtz. Lets the car drift out, but not too much. There you can see the gaps. Jones 6.3 seconds behind Prost. Then Piquet behind him. John Watson is 15 seconds behind Piquet in fourth place. Hector Rybak and Elio De Angelis is one lap short, because he has been lapped by the race leader. Nelson Piquet, number 5, second in the World Championship this year. Not the most reliable of races, although some of the retirements, Jacques Lafitte and and Carlos Reutemann, who tangled, of course, was nothing to do with the motor cars, the reliability of the engines, the gearboxes, or anything else for that matter. But obviously quite a lot of car trouble for other competitors too, as we look at Nelson Piquet going to Tarzan. Now this is 175 miles an hour to this point, down through the gearbox, right down into second gear. Very, very, very tight bend. It's one of these bends that keeps on going on, and then it's away to Gerlach, the left and right, then down to Hugenholtz, the left-hander, and up through the gears from second to third here, then up into fourth gear, 155 miles an hour, down to the Rob Slottermacher bends, round to the right-hander at Ski Black, which is where third place man Nelson Piquet is now. And Piquet is 16 seconds behind Alan Jones and 16 seconds ahead of John Watson. So Piquet is certainly having to pace himself, watch his lap board signals as he completes each lap to tell him what the gap between himself and the man ahead of him, Alan Jones, is. And he therefore hasn't got the stimulus of being very close to somebody to provide the challenge. Lap 43, and if your heart skip a beat because the man in the picture is Alan Jones and you think he's in the lead, I'm sorry to disappoint you, he is not, because Alain Prost is still up front, notwithstanding the fact that that terrific tussle between himself and the world champion that we're looking at now was resolved at one point when Alan Jones scrambled by, but Alain Prost, with a flash of Gallic fire, just prodded the right-hand pedal a bit more and surged past Alan Jones on the run down to Tarzan and has now extended his lead. Alan Jones has got something wrong with the car. It may be that the tyres are going off a bit, but he's now 8 seconds behind Alain Prost, with Nelson Piquet behind him and a long way behind him, some 16 seconds behind, in third position. Then another 16 seconds back, it is John Watson. In fifth position is Hector Rabac, in the second of the two Parmalat Brabhams. In sixth place, and he has been lapped by Alain Prost, the race leader, but not yet by Alan Jones, is Elio De Angelis. And with Jacques Lafitte and Carlos Reutemann having gone out of the race when they tangled and pushed each other off the circuit, the World Championship position is going to be incredibly close at the end of this race if the positions remain as they are now. I wonder if Alan Jones has got the same sort of problem as he had in Austria. We don't know, but there's plenty of time to find out. And I tell you again, Prost is leading from Jones. Piquet is in third position. Watson, Rabac and De Angelis. We're on lap 44. It is a 72-lap race. Back in the points in Austria, and now he's got to try and do something about number 15, Alain Prost, and Jones has got about 25 laps to do it, but I don't think he can. Well, I'm going to start watching very carefully the gap between number 15, Prost, this man, the 26-year-old Frenchman, and Alan Jones, to see whether Alan is closing up. It's Siegfried Starr, the Italian psychologist who gets involved in a bit of yoga before all the races begins, who is ahead of Prost now. The bearded Siegfried Starr, who, notwithstanding his very Germanic name, is Italian, ex-Formula 3 champion of Italy, did well in Formula 2 in Atonement last year because Starr won one of the Formula 2 championship races last year. And you may pass on my right was the signal which he gave Prost, and Prost has taken advantage of it and surged through enormous power. That V6 1.5 litre Renault engine produces, it is alleged, about 540, believe it or not, brake horsepower. And here is Prost coming up to complete the lap, and I'll give you the gap between himself and the second place man, Alan Jones. And there's the replay as he passes Starr, and the gap is 7.84 seconds. And we're back live with Alain Prost on his way to his second Grand Prix victory, third in the Argentine a brilliant first. If he had to win a Grand Prix anywhere, he would have wanted, of course, being very French, he wanted to be a professional footballer, but decided he would take up motor racing instead. And if he wanted to win any race, it was obviously going to be in France, and he did just that.
Well, just looking at this race now, Murray, it seems really a shame that the field has spread out a little bit. Some sort of dominance that Alan Prost stamps on it has really spoiled it, as we were concertinaing up earlier. But the gap hasn't changed much in the last 3 or 4 laps, or even 5 laps. Whether that's the fact that Prost has now established himself an 8-second lead or thereabouts over Alan Jones in second place and is taking it easy, or whether that little burst that he put on earlier, relative certainly to Jones and Piquet, whether that was some good form from his car that's now gone. Let's hope in a way that it's the latter, and that we can close up for a good race for the end. There's Alan Jones just going round the Tarzan hairpin. He's had an absolutely marvellous year. He's driven, without doubt, his best ever season. It's just been a little bit unlucky not to have more points, but of course that's the way it goes in later racing. Driving well and getting results are two very different things very often, which is a sad thing about the sport, but it's the nature of it, with mechanical things involved as well, and of course it means that your team therefore come into a very important part, and so does luck as well. There's John Watson going in 4th place, going very well indeed, having another good race. It was a bit of a disappointment for the Marlboro team in Austria after their and Germany after their win in Britain. But the car definitely goes well on some fast circuits, and they're getting better and better all the time. And it's nice to see the Marlboro team, Marlboro parent team at last re-emerging with their new management, which started at the beginning of the season, definitely paying dividends and improving. Let's hope they continue to improve. Watson's certainly driving with a new confidence and aggression now that he's got some reasonable machinery to play with.
John Watson, of course, the British Grand Prix winner, 5th equal in the World Championship, and since the British Grand Prix he has finished 6th in Germany and 6th in Austria. He was 2nd in France, 3rd in Spain. So he's got a lot of very solid drives behind him in the points to give him that 5th equal championship position. And driving what, in my opinion, is certainly the prettiest car in the World Championship Formula 1 series at the moment, the Marlboro MP4, designed by John Barnard, and it's made out of carbon fibre in a unique and distinctive way, and it showed its strength, this car, when at this point, just there, Andrea de Cesaris went off in practice yesterday at 130 miles an hour, replay of John Watson. And have a look at how little the suspension of these cars flexes now. You can see the rockers hardly moving, and that is because there is only about an inch of suspension movement on these Formula 1 cars now, and indeed the tyres are one of the main suspension items, because you look at the side of the car and you see it is essential to maintain the minimum ground clearance in order to get the maximum ground force. And we're looking now, you can see again, at Prost's car, exactly the same situation applies. And I was saying, and I'll very quickly finish that point, that notwithstanding the fact that Andrea de Cesaris went straight into the Armco, separated only by a pile of tyres at over 130 miles an hour, the carbon fibre tub of his Marlboro MP4 absorbed all the punishment, virtually unscathed, and de Cesaris stepped out of the car without a scratch on him. Incredible. Prost, the leader. And Prost is on his 51st lap in this 72-lap race. And although he's got a comfortable cushion between himself and Alan Jones, René Arnoux, that is, Prost's team leader, team mates rather, I think they, with Marie-Claude Beaumont, the Renault team PR lady in attendance. And there is Arnoux' teammate, and Arnoux had a terrible season. He's failed to finish in race after race. And as Siegfried Starr comes into the pits with a flapping tyre on the near side rear wheel, he comes into the Arrows, into the Regno Arrows pit position, and you can see, we hope, a really good pit stop at work now. Off comes the wheel, and one of those mechanics is Dave Luckett, the man who was trapped between Sturr's car and Patrase's car at Zolder. And there's another puncture. This is the ATS car of Slim Borgood, and I wonder if that is significant. That is an Avon tyre that has punctured on Borgood's car. It's a Pirelli tyre that is punctured on the Arrows of Sturr, who is now out of the pits, but it looks as though the tyres are taking a lot of stick on the circuit.
Yes, I think it's a very abrasive surface, Murray. That's absolutely correct. And we've got a bit of sand in it and things. But that's John Watson stop.
John Watson in 4th position, out of the race, and I wonder why. I'm trying to get a close look at the car. The near side rear suspension looked a bit umpty to me, but it may not have been that. John, of course, was some 16 seconds behind Piquet in 3rd position, and that means to say that with Watson out of the race, with Borgood coming in, and as I have said before, it looks as though the car mortality is such that there are going to be remarkably few finishers in this Dutch Grand Prix, and there's still a long way to go. They're on lap 52. There's another 20 laps to go. And the Michelin tyres of Prost's car are taking just as much of a hammering, of course, as the Avons, the Pirellis and the Goodyears of the other competitors. And I wonder how they're going to stand up to it. They must be very worried in the Renault pits, because they should have won several races this year. Well, you can say should have. If this had happened and if that happened, they would have won more races, but then so would Alan Jones. And it's probably even Steven in the end. But Prost went out of the Austrian Grand Prix, the man that we're looking at now, in the lead in Holland, through no fault of his own. And it would, in a way, be poetic justice if he came home first in this race, the Austrian Grand Prix, and he's showing every sign of doing just that, because he is now 12 seconds ahead of Alan Jones. Closing up on the 4th place man, Hector Ribac, the Mexican in Mexican construction, in very successful business of his own. There's Nelson Piquet. And we moved from Ribac and Piquet and Jones, with Jones on his way to lap Ribac, who is in 4th place. We move to Nelson Piquet in 3rd position, so the two Parmalat Brabhams are in 3rd and 4th places. In one race earlier on this year, they were in 1st and 2nd places in the Argentine, because Hector Ribac drove as he had never driven before or since, and actually got up to 2nd place behind his teammates. There is his teammate, 2 Grand Prix victories behind him this year. Nelson Piquet, 6 Grand Prix wins altogether, 2nd in last year's World Championship, and he won the race before last in Germany and finished 3rd in Austria just 2 weekends ago. Surely a world champion of the future. 2nd last year, 2nd in this year's championship. A very real chance of winning it, as he finishes this race only 2 points behind Carlos Reutemann, who is of course out of the Dutch Grand Prix. Mario Andretti in the Alfa Romeo is ahead of Nelson Piquet, and really there are now only, well, in terms of really doing anything, it's only a race between Prost, Jones and Piquet, who have got 32 seconds between Prost and Piquet that we're looking at now, who is in 3rd position. Because, as you have heard, Ribac, who is in 4th place, De Angelis, who is in 5th, Sura, who is in 6th, and Salazar, who is in 7th place, has all been lapped. And Salazar is still only 1 lap behind the race leaders. But then Alboreto, who is 8th, has been lapped twice, and so on. right down to Andretti, who has been lapped 4 times in 11th place.
Yes, it was a pity, really. The race, I think, lost, apart from the concertina and going the other way, well, the early leaders, Prost, Jones and Piquet, looked like they were closing up together. There's Piquet in a very lonely 3rd place. The race lost a lot of character, where, of course, when Reutemann and the feet went out. And it was an interesting situation, because I thought it was very uncharacteristic of Reutemann, who was trying to overtake the feet at the time. He'd come down the inside under braking, and we saw that little shot of an action replay, and but we didn't see the whole thing, so we don't really know what happened. But what I do know is that Reutemann is a very defensive driver, very careful, very experienced, and he's leading the championship, and his main concern now will be just to pick up points steadily, or it should be, unless, of course, the pressure's getting to him, and he could see his closest rivals in front of him, and was beginning to panic a bit. But that's unlike Carlos. But, of course, the circumstances of the accident we can only speculate on. But one has to say that if he was overtaken from behind, he must have some contributory factor by the very fact that he was overtaken. If he may maintain that the feet moved over on him or something like that going into the corner. But certainly it would seem to me that it was very much, if there was any element of impetuosity in the overtaking manoeuvre from Carlos Reutemann, that would seem to be a fundamental tactic of errors at this stage of the championship. He's got a little lead. The other guys could have slowed down or broken down during the race, and he certainly, the last place he wants to be is back in his caravan changing.
Well, if I was advising the producer, and let me hasten to say I am not, what I would be saying to him now, as we look at Nelson Piquet, and Alan Jones has been the quickest so far, as you see, in 1 minute 21.83, which is well off René Arnoux' last year's lap record, 1 minute 19.87. And as Piquet completes another lap, I would be saying, why not have a look at this terrific battle that is going on for 6th position, which unfortunately we can't see, between Marc Surer, the Swiss driver in the Theodore, and Eliseo Salazar, the Chilean in the Mo Nunn and Nigel Bennett designed Ensign, because they are hammer and tongs at it for 6th position. Maybe we'll see a bit of it later. We're concentrating for the moment on one of the very top men of motor racing, World Championship Grand Prix, who is rumoured, and I emphasise and heavily underline the word rumour, to be moving to the Marlborough team next year. We were looking at Nelson Piquet. Now we look at the leader, Alain Prost, who has fought his way past, and Salazar has got ahead of number 14, Salazar, that we just saw behind Alain Prost as Prost goes round Tarzan. Look for the next two. You see the red and white ensign of Eliseo Salazar ahead of the white Theodore of the Swiss driver Marc Surer, and Eliseo Salazar, as we watch the leader, Alain Prost. Salazar has moved up into a fine 6th position and into the World Championship points on lap 59 out of 72. And Salazar, I just caught a quick flash there, has already pulled out 2 or 3 car length lead over Surer, and behind Surer, but several laps behind, is Slim Borgood in the yellow ATS. The leader, Alain Prost, is it going to be his 2nd Grand Prix win? He goes down into Bosquet. There's Salazar. Here is Prost. And I wonder if Marc Surer is wryly thinking to himself, Eliseo Salazar took my seat in that car, because he did, as they thunder down the straight towards Tarzan behind Alain Prost, the leader. Marc Surer, whose seat in the ensign was taken by Eliseo Salazar, has dropped down to 7th place. Salazar in 6th position, 2 laps now behind the leaders. De Angelis in 5th position has been lapped. Hector Ribac in 4th place has been lapped. Nelson Piquet is in 3rd position, a long way behind Alan Jones, who is increasingly dropping back behind Alain Prost, that we look at now. So Prost's problem is simply to keep going. He can afford to lose quite a lot of time, pace the car, but not slow down so much that he loses his concentration, which is a very dangerous thing to do. And you can go off in a flash because the cars are going very, very quickly indeed. There is Prost. Diminutive driver. They build very small cars at Renault because they have very small drivers for them. Alain Prost and René Arnoux are both slight of stature, and Prost is completing now his 60th lap, and he goes across the line. And I've got the stopwatch running to see how far Alain Prost is now ahead of Alan Jones. And the answer is 7.25 seconds. The gap has come down a bit, but it could well be because Prost is taking things easy, keeping away from the verges so as not to damage his tyres, especially there, which is, as I have said before, where Alan Jones went off so disastrously last year, giving himself plenty of room, perhaps changing up a fraction of a second earlier than he would normally do, perhaps braking a fraction earlier than he would normally do, giving the car the kindest, easiest time possible, knowing that he's still got a fair distance to go, knowing that he's got a comfortable cushion, knowing that if he can finish this race where he is, it's going to be his second Grand Prix win of 1981, making him very much the darling of France, which he made himself also, of course, when he won the French Grand Prix. And he's rather put René Arnoux' nose out of joint, because René might well have regarded himself, Prost leading, Jones second, Piquet third, Ribac a lap back, as is De Angelis, and Salazar in sixth position, 2 laps further back. And René Arnoux might well have regarded himself as being the Renault team leader when Jean-Pierre Jabouille went to Talbot at the beginning of this year. But in terms of sheer ability, I'm afraid it's been Prost rather than Arnoux who has got the results this year. And the gap between Prost and Jones is now up to 14.9 seconds. Jones is clearly nursing the motor car for some reason or another. I cannot believe that Prost is that much superior, or the Renault that much better than the Williams, for him to be pulling away on sheer driving ability or car superiority as we watch Salazar now. A good opportunity to have a good close look at the ensign, the Mo Nigel Bennett ensign of Eliseo Salazar, who, if he finishes where he is, must achieve one of his championships, and that's to finish in the points. He's in 6th position, 14th in Spain, and in every other race this year he has either failed to qualify, just a few of them, but then he moved up into a situation where he very clearly became an obvious qualifier, only to have trouble in race after race and to fail to finish. This is his 5th Grand Prix, the man who entered racing. There's Mark Sura. Behind Sura is Slim Borgood. There is Jean-Pierre. There is Hector Ribac with Alan Jones in front of him. And Alan Jones is now about to lap the 4th place man. So the Dutch Grand Prix, we must honestly say, has become a bit processional, but every time I have said that in the past, something exciting has happened to change the situation altogether. The situation at the moment being that on lap 63 out of 72, with therefore 9 laps including the one they are on to go, Alain Prost is leading Alan Jones by 15 seconds. Nelson Piquet is 11 seconds in 3rd place behind Alan Jones. Hector Ribac in the 2nd of the 2 Brabhams, because the first of them is his team leader, Nelson Piquet, is in 4th place, a lap behind the leaders. Elio De Angelis in the John Player Special Lotus is in 5th place, a lap behind. Eliseo Salazar is 6th. Then it's Sura 7th, Alboreto 8th, Siegfried Sturr is in 9th position, in spite of having to come into the pits to change that tyre. Slim Borgood, that we have seen, is 4 laps behind the leaders, but in 10th place. Mario Andretti is on the same lap as Borgood, and we're looking at Borgood now behind Mark Sura. Andretti is in 11th place. John Watson is out of the race altogether, as are Cheever, Jerrier, Arnoux, Giacomelli, Lafitte, Reutemann, Patrese, Daly, Pironi, Mansell, Torbay and Villeneuve. And we watch Alan Jones on his 63rd lap. The gap between Jones and Piquet then is 9.25 seconds, and that means that Piquet is gaining. It was 16 seconds. So Jones must be in trouble of a magnitude that is not just losing him time to Alain Prost, the leader, with 15 seconds between Prost and himself, but to Nelson Piquet, and this gaggle of cars in front of Jones isn't going to do him much good. He passes Sura.
And I don't think we have any evidence to worry unduly, Murray, yet, because Jones, I don't think, has really slowed down. His gap to Prost has stayed pretty constant, although Piquet is creeping up. I think the rate of progress would have to be faster, but certainly we may get a bit of finish, and if Jones is in trouble, even that, he's going to have to work hard.
There's Borgood, the Swedish driver, and out from behind his slipstream comes the Brabham of Hector Rybak in 4th position, nips through on the inside of Tarzan. Borgood obligingly moves over and then closes up with his car's nose tucked under the rear aerofoil of Rybak's car, but not for long, because the Mexican is getting away. The Brabham is beautifully set up. Rybak in 4th position. And they are now on lap 65. 7 laps to go, including this one, and there's not so much left of this one. Rybak 4th, Borgood in 10th position. And behind Borgood is Alan Jones. And of course, there is Salazar, who is 6th. So they really spread out now, because Salazar is just ahead of Rybak on the circuit, but he's a full lap, and indeed two laps behind him in race distance. And this race of attrition now seems to be in a situation where the drivers are very much in the groove, the cars are running reliably, the tyres are not giving trouble, they will know where they are. It would seem to me that no one can do very much about getting a place, because Rybak now is passing, that's Piquet, I'm sorry, passing Michele Alboreto. Nelson Piquet in 3rd position, and he's 20 seconds behind Alan Jones. Alboreto, the young Italian, is in 7th place, but Alboreto is a full lap. No, he's on the same lap as Eliseo Salazar. Salazar 6th, De Angelis 5th, Rybak 4th, Piquet 3rd, Jones 2nd, and Prost the race leader. Nelson Piquet, the 3rd place man in the Brabham, and he's got Elio De Angelis ahead of him. Elio De Angelis, who is in 5th place, and he's already been lapped once. Alain Prost is now on his 67th lap, as is Alan Jones. There is the Australian from Glenburn in Victoria, his 93rd Grand Prix, with such a wealth of experience behind him in Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula Atlantic. He's now increased his interest because he's become an author and written probably the most controversial book about motor racing and his views on it that's ever been written in the history of racing. And Alan Jones is a man with 11 Grand Prix victories behind him, 6 of them last year. And he's holding that second place quite easily. There's a 16-second gap now. It's back to between himself and Piquet. So no problem. Or is there? Or is there? I was reading that off a monitor, but there is Piquet in the background. On lap 67, Alan Jones in second place, in trouble, and there is Mario Andretti in real trouble. Mario Andretti, the American who was well down in 11th position, is clearly out of the race. Is he trapped in the cockpit, or is he just taking his time in getting out of it? But there's a battle developing for second place as we watch now Mario Andretti, the world champion of 1978, who comes from Nazareth in Pennsylvania, and it looks to me as though with Nelson Piquet lapping Elio De Angelis, there is going to be a change of position for second place. Alan Jones, the Australian, who needs to stay where he is going to lose second place to Nelson Piquet, and I said needs to stay where he is because he will get 6 points for World Championship second place if he can stay there now. But Piquet has clawed his way up through the field. And it looks to me as... the broken Alfa Romeo of Mario Andretti, who has just gone off the course and was trapped in the cockpit for some time. He's just got out of it, but I can't give you any more information on him than that at the moment, but leading the race and leading very comfortably on lap 68 out of 72 continues to be this man, Alain Prost. But behind Prost, and some 16 or seconds or so, there's that fantastic battle, and you see it change because Nelson Piquet at Tarzan has nipped past Alan Jones, the doughty world champion Australian, who has slipped down to third position. Now, Jones has clearly been in some sort of trouble for a long, long time, and Nelson Piquet has been inexorably inching up on Jones, and then it became more than inching up. It became closing up quite visibly. The gap came down to 15 seconds to 10. And then all of a sudden, Nelson Piquet was right behind Alan Jones. And look at it again, a replay of Nelson Piquet on lap 69, taking second place at Tarzan from the world champion Alan Jones. And that really transforms the world championship situation because Piquet, in moving up from third to second, has gained himself an extra 2 world championship points. I'm doing some quick mental arithmetic while I'm talking to you, and I reckon that if Piquet stays where he is now, that is to say in second place until the end of the race, he will be tying for the lead in the World Championship with Carlos Reutemann, who went out of the race much earlier on. And this has been very much a Dutch Grand Prix of attrition, because with the drivers on the 69th lap out of 72, and we look at Alan Jones closing up on Elio De Angelis, Alan Jones now in third place and Elio De Angelis is in 5th position. And there is Eliseo Salazar, who's driven a wonderful race in 6th position. Salazar in the ensign, car number 14, and Piquet comes up behind Slim Borgood.
Well, Alan Jones has been, as you rightly said, in trouble for some time, and it seems to be a deteriorating condition. We can't be sure what happened, although it did appear that he touched Eddie Cheever earlier in the race when he was lapping him, and therefore may have damaged his suspension. There's some speculation that may be the case, and if that is the case, then probably his tyres were going off. He's got a wheel a bit out of line. That damages the tyre, because he does seem to be fighting for grip rather badly. We're just looking at Mario Andretti's actions. I saw they had to carry him away there. He obviously from the damage to the car, you can see a heavy, heavy shunt.
Where is Alan Jones? I look back and Jones was not in sight, and Piquet has either pulled out a terrific lead over Jones, who was in third place all of a sudden, or Alan Jones is in real trouble. And if that is the case, that means to say Hector Ribac will come up into fourth position. And the leaders are now on their 71st lap out of 72. Elio De Angelis has gone through, and there is no sign of Alan Jones. So there he is. Alan Jones has slowed right down, and he's being passed left and right by much slower drivers as we look at Alain Prost on his last lap but one.
Yes, Alan Jones would have slowed right down because he obviously can't race the quick guys, and he's got a whole lap on Hector Ribac in fourth place, and with a couple of laps to go, there's no point taking any risks. He just wants to finish the race, and he's doing the sensible thing, because it's particularly if he's got damaged suspension, he wants to give that the lightest possible load, because the last thing he wants to have, of course, is a suspension failure right at the end of the race.
And having talked a lot about, and deservedly so, Eliseo Salazar, there's a great scrap going on between him and Michele Alboreto for sixth place. But this is undoubtedly the man of the race. Alain Prost, 26 years old, from Saint-Chamond, in only his 22nd Grand Prix, who is now crossing the line to start his 72nd and last lap in this Dutch Grand Prix, on his way to 9 World Championship points and his second Grand Prix victory of the year, because he brilliantly won the two-part Grand Prix thanks to superb driving ability and some wonderful gamesmanship by the Renault technicians, who turned up the booster bit, put him on qualifying cars and enabled him to win his own French Grand Prix. Then second in Germany, and Michele Alboreto is out of the race, and it's a good thing it isn't more than 72 laps, because there are now only 3 drivers on the same lap: Prost, Piquet and Jones, first, second and third. Hector Ribac is in fourth position now, a lap behind. Elio De Angelis is in fifth place. Eliseo Salazar from Chile in the enzyme looks as though he is going to more than justify the faith of his Chilean countrymen in sponsoring him to race in the World Championship by finishing in sixth place, as Prost passes Alboreto's car. Tragic luck for the Italian, going out in sixth or seventh place on the very last lap of the Dutch Grand Prix, and that means to say that Siegfried Starr will come up into seventh place, but the winner is Alain Prost. He's approaching the line now. He goes across the line and gets a tremendous cheer from the Renault team. He has won the Dutch Grand Prix of 1981 and his second race. And the two-handed salute that we saw in France comes again from young Alain Prost, who now has 16 points in the World Championship and is passed on the run-down lap by the fourth place man, Hector Ribac, as Salazar finishes in sixth position. And both the race then, a win for Alain Prost with Piquet second, Alan Jones in third position, Hector Ribac in fourth place, Elio De Angelis in fifth, and Eliseo Salazar in sixth place, with only 3 competitors finishing the full race distance. The World Championship is more exciting than ever, because now Carlos Reutemann and Nelson Piquet are tying for first place with 45 points. In third position is Jacques Lafitte, only 3 points ahead of Alan Jones. In fifth position is Alain Prost after his second Grand Prix victory, and tying for sixth place Gilles Villeneuve and John Watson. John Watson and Nigel Mansell both out of the Dutch Grand Prix, and indeed with only 3 competitors finishing the full race distance, it has been a disappointing race from the point of view of seeing so many drivers go out, but that takes nothing away from number 15, the winner Alain Prost, from number 5, the second place man who is just behind Prost, Nelson Piquet, or number 1, Alan Jones, finishing in third place And as you can see from those World Championship positions, we go to the next Grand Prix at Monza in Italy in a fortnight's time, with the World Championship excitement heightened even more, because those 6 men are all still in with a chance of becoming the champion of 1981.